The Philadelphia 76ers are officially back in the market to be star hunting and attracting some of the prime time names on the NBA trade docket. This means both for the trade perspective and the free agent side of things, and Daryl Morey may very well be laying the track record for both. Now, I just dropped a video discussing the LeBron James side of things and the likelihood of him finding his way to Philadelphia, but there's a couple more unlikely names that it seems the Sixers struck out on the deadline. So we have this report from Woj here saying that Daryl Morey reportedly contacted the Phoenix Suns to inquire about the availability of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, and also reached out to the Lakers to check on LeBron James, per Woj. He went 0 for 4. Now, I don't think he should be criticized for going 0 for 4 in this. To me, this is more of a testament and a sign of positivity that he is swinging for the fences, that he does have this type of big-name approach. We know that's who Daryl Morey is at his core, is he is a guy that wants to take these big-time swings, to bring in these superstars, that it is a star-driven league, even still, as we've seen a little bit more of a swing back towards the team-oriented style of play, that you still need those big names when push comes to shove, when it's all said and done, and you put your chips in the middle. And to dive into the full report for what it said as far as Morey's targeting approach here, we have, quote, Dunleavy Jr. was the second team executive to call Pelinka on a possible James trade, sources said. After seeing James' murky social media post of an hourglass a week before the trade deadline, Philadelphia 76ers president of basketball operations Daryl Morey called Pelinka to probe on a James trade and was immediately told that James wasn't available. In fact, Pelinka responded by asking Morey if Joel Embiid was available, sources said, and that ended that brief conversation. These sorts of bold trade calls are historically a common practice for Morey, who also called the Phoenix Suns and asked about a trade for Durant prior to the deadline, sources said. When told no on Durant, Morey then asked about the availability of Devin Booker and Bradley Beal too. Unsurprisingly, these were no's as well, sources said. So that is the way that Daryl Morey operates, is he is a guy that wants to start at the top and then work down the checklist as far as, can I get the best player available? And that is why he's the right guy to continue to be in charge of the Philadelphia 76ers. That even as great as they are currently constructed, and I am more excited about this team than most following the trade deadline, that I think Daryl Morey's right, that they ultimately did get the best player that was traded in Buddy Hield, that it was a tough market for him to work with. But to me, this speaks way more about him laying the groundwork for a potential long-term move. That this Suns team, there's no doubt in my mind that they want to see it through for this specific season. But there's a lot of guys that tend to get antsy on that roster, and Kevin Durant leading the charge with that. We know this is a guy that has bounced around, and what's different about these Suns compared to the Sixers, obviously plenty from the roster construction standpoint, but the Sixers have put such a focus on this long-term flexibility, that they want this cap space, they want these lack of player commitments, that their whole focus is on leaving as many options as possible this summer. The Suns, very much the opposite. And to look at their salary cap as a whole, take a look at this table, just look at how much money is tied up in the trio of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. And that being with an extension coming for Devin Booker next year, you can see the extension or the estimates for what those numbers will exactly be. There is not a world in which Devin Booker is the guy that is the odd man out in this Suns trio, that he's the homegrown talent there. He's a guy who, even to this day, I would argue is the driving force of that current team. And then you look around and see Kevin Durant on the books for $47.6 million this season, $51.1 million next season, $54.7 million in 25-26. Bradley Beal on the books for $46.7 million this season, $50.2 million next year, $53.6 million the following year. That is a ton of money to be committed to guys. But where that does bring appeal to me, and where I think Daryl Morey is eyeing from afar or could see a problem popping up in the future, is the Suns lack a number of ways to get better without moving these deals. That so much is committed to these three stars that they're so dependent on those guys from both a production standpoint and then from a salary cap standpoint. You're more or less reliant on getting a number of guys to sign on minimums, getting guys that want to play with these superstars to have a chance to compete for a title, but that only works if it works. That if there begins to be some frustration with the lack of flexibility within the roster, it would not surprise me if the ultimate decision is they have to move on from one of these guys. Now, we have to have very different discussions about each one of these players. That I look at Bradley Beal, significantly different than I look at Kevin Durant. I look at Kevin Durant, significantly different than I look at Devin Booker. But these are guys that you cannot argue are among the top talents in our league. And you can see a world where with this newfound cap space, with this flexibility, I would love to see the Sixers add a number of targets and not be as committed to these big-time max contracts. That maybe you want to sign Buddy Hield to bring him back on a contract in that $15 to $20 million range. And same with a number of targets like that. Malik Monk is a guy that is beginning to pop to me as a free agent target, that you can bring him back for maybe a $20 million deal per season. And rather than being so committed to these max contracts that take up such a high percentage of the salary cap, you can stack these contracts in a way that are appealing both from a trade standpoint and guys that do add value to your basketball team on the floor. So I would love to see the Sixers go that route. And I think from a team, or for a team like the Phoenix Suns that have so much tied up to those specific guys, that is an outlet for a trade that could look appealing. Now, there's a lot of theoreticals that are being discussed in this situation. This is nothing that I see super pressing, but I do think it is noteworthy to just put out there that Daryl Morey is still working the phones and still has some sort of game plan. And I did want to mention this Suns team specifically, that I don't think the chances of them falling apart are zero. That I think they're a very matchup-dependent team. This is coming off that I watched them play the Kings last night, and the Suns did pick up an impressive win in that one. But you can still see the flaws in their team. That Domantas Sabonis really took it to that team, the way that he was able to use his physicality and answer in a way that they just don't have a true center that can be relied on. That Yusuf Nurkic, we know the pros and cons of his game, not a guy that you can have out there in an every matchup standpoint, and a guy that just lacks some of the physicality and some of the motor that I think is necessary for that team. They run a lot of lineups in which Kevin Durant is the primary rim protector, and really Durant deserves a lot of credit for being the guy that kind of reduced from a scoring role and does a lot more of the little things, the rebounding, the playmaking, the defense, that I've been surprised to see what a backseat that he has taken. Devin Booker, very much the motor of that team. And to look at the standings specifically, we can see that it has translated to a 32-22 record, which at this current time puts them at 5th place in the Western Conference. Now, my comments there is, I think this is a very matchup-based team. That, let's say the NBA season ends right now at the point of recording it. We're talking about a Phoenix Suns versus Denver Nuggets 7-game series there. And I don't feel too great about that. That I think there's a real world where the defending champions, they have it down to a science as far as the system they play in, the way that they can create chances for others in a way that isn't as isocentric as the way that the Phoenix Suns play. And I do think that the Nuggets would ultimately win that in a 7-game series. So if that is the case, say that completely plays out, that the Phoenix Suns are unable to advance past the first round. And by the way, I don't think that the Nuggets are the only team that, say they end up with a matchup with the Clippers or the Thunder, or even if you want to look towards a team like the Dallas Mavericks, who've shown moments as playoff risers in years past, or even a team like the Lakers or Warriors, if they make a climb up the table, there's a lot of tough teams in the West that I think could give this Suns team trouble. And while you can't count them out because of the amount of talent and the way that they can get hot and score the basketball when things are going right, I do think this is a very matchup-dependent team, and that's not a system to ultimately win a championship. That if there's teams I'm looking at that I don't feel good about the way that you can match up against them, probably not a great sign for your chances of beating everyone. So if that is the case, say that plays out, and that the Suns are a first-round exit this year, that makes everyone feel a little more impatient there. Starting with Matt Ishbia right up top, who is essentially managing this like it's a fantasy football team. The way that he's trading guys and signing big names, that you can see him getting a little impatient, that maybe I do need more flexibility, not having so much tied up to him. He is a guy that seems far from gun-shy and seems willing to make whatever deal possible, and also a guy that I think is learning on the fly a little bit. That we all think we can be GMs, but it's a different story when you're put in that shoes and have to make some of these tough decisions. And when we're talking about the CBA and the amount of money that they're going to be put over the luxury tax, all these different factors playing in, I do see a world where some people get in his ear from the money side of things and say, we need to start shedding. And that's when it does look likely where a team like the Sixers could put themselves in a spot to sweep in. So once again, I do think this is mostly theoretical to this point, that even if I want to compare these big-time rumors, I give the LeBron James conversation a lot more weight than I'll give the Suns, and frankly, I don't think either of them are incredibly likely, but this is still a testament to Daryl Morey doing the work between the margins, laying the groundwork for future moves, and potentially putting the Sixers team in the driver's seat to add some of the most supreme talent across the entire NBA. So for that, I will tip my cap to Daryl Morey. Shout out to him for continuing to work the phones while he's taking all the heat at the trade deadline. This team looks like it is not dead yet, and obviously everything is dependent on whether Joel Embiid will come back, what the time frame for all that is. We're heading into the All-Star break at this point in time, so we will see how things shake out on the other side. Hopefully, guys continue to get healthy, but appreciate all you guys for tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing a subscribe on the channel. Keep the Sixers Digest family growing. Drop a like on this video, and let me know your thoughts on the comment. If you have to pick one of these Sun stars, which one interests you the most? Do you think there's a world where there's any chance that the Sixers get any of them, or anything else you got in your mind? So appreciate you guys for tuning in once again. I'll talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest.